Hello and welcome back to the channel. Yeah, this is a video a bit out of the blue. We're going to do a tier list on all the characters in the Life is Strange franchise that I could think of anything to say of. This is off the dome, it's not scripted, so it's basically just my first thoughts on them based off what we've seen of them throughout the game. This in alphabetical order. You can see the nice names I've given here to the tiers. And let's get into it. Okay, so starting off, we've got Alderman. I haven't really got much to say about him. I mean, he's kind of just dumped into double exposure as an antagonist for like 5 minutes, then he disappears and we don't see him again. Now, presumably he would be in the supposed sequel that's going to come out to this. Until then, I can only rate him off what I've seen, which is put him down here. Next up, our first protagonist of the tier list early on is Alex. Yeah, I quite like her character. I like her journey, where she's quite timid when entering the town and socially awkward given her condition. But then, by the end of the game, she's earned her place in Haven Springs and is a part of the community that is there. I like her relationship with all the characters around Haven Springs, and in making this list, what I've learned is that both don't know the deck not and use their side characters in completely different ways, and I'll get into that later into the tier list when it's more relevant. Now, I don't think Alex is quite in the S tier for me. I'd put her A quite comfortably though. It's mainly because she's not as fully fleshed out as some of the other protagonists. Mainly because I feel like she finds herself in less interesting situations than them. So that's not her fault as a character, it's more the whole plot as a whole of True Colors just isn't as engaging, and therefore maybe she isn't. But yeah, I still quite like her. Next up, Amanda. You'll find the case of most double exposure characters. I don't really have an opinion on them. I quite like the scene, I forget in which chapter, where you go to like the imaginary concert of her. That is like probably the most Life is Strange scene, sorry, from that game. Apart from that, there's the romance option. I really feel nothing. So yeah, C tier. Next though, someone I do quite like is Brody in the second game. One of the best side characters in the second game, and it shows the game at its full strengths of this episode nature where, side characters dipped in and out. He's very helpful to the brothers in episode 1, and you can check his blog later. He's just quite an interesting guy, and he's very helpful, so I'm actually feeling the A tier here. Another side character from the second game who is good, but not as good, in my opinion, is Cassidy. Now, she's in episode 3 and can appear in the ending if you end up in Mexico. And I quite like Cassidy as the romance option for Sean in episode 3. I quite like their interactions with the weed farm group as a whole. And also the conflict this brings for Daniel is quite engaging, I'd say, in the third episode. But that's when you really start to dislike Daniel, well, me specifically. But yeah, I like how she can support you in terms of opposing the break-in attempt on the farm at the end of the episode. And yeah, she appears in the ending, so B tier. Not as good as Brody, but close. Next is Chris's dad from Captain Spirit, and I do not like him. Now, as a character, I think he's decent. He's quite a, realistic view of, a father who's been impacted by grief. But he's not a very nice father. I mean, he's quite abusive, you could say. Yeah, I guess D tier. Moving on, another side character is Charlotte from True Colors. She's fine. I quite like her representation as well of grief, similar to Chris's dad. This time, though, the grief is directed at her own son, who she resents for his role in the death of Gabe, who was her partner at the time. Which is quite a, honest reaction from her. They could have just played it that she still loves her son no matter what, but there is some conflict there because of the demise of Gabe. There's also a really good scene in chapter 4 where she like has some seem like suicidal ideation. It's very dark and cold. If you take her emotions from her, the chapter before, and she just sort of feels nothing in general. I'd recommend watching that if you haven't seen it before because you may have missed it. But I'd put her in B as well. Now, speaking of protagonists earlier, we're back to maybe the main character of the universe, which is Chloe. What more can you say about her? Controversial among many detractors of the first game, and for some justifiable reasons. But I do disagree with those reasons still. I love her arc in the first game, where she's very resentful of Arcadia Bay at the start, but then commits the ultimate sacrifice in the sacrifice in her ending. I love the relationship with Max throughout the game. And yeah, just a very memorable character, very memorable lines, memorable scenes. I could get more of the creaking before the storm in terms of how it's sort of like a fan fiction or a poorly written fan fiction, but I still like it just for the atmospheric nature and the fact we're back in Arcadia Bay. Her relationship with Rachel is still pretty well done in my opinion, even if maybe it's slightly abusive or toxic in a sense. But for me, it's still an S tier, and you can't really argue with it, in my opinion, if you're a big fan of the game. Next up, Chris. I think he's fine. I think Captain Spirit is decent enough. And then when we get into his appearances in the actual second game, I like his friendship with Daniel. It's okay, it's just pretty forgettable. I'd probably go B just because of his depiction of a child of domestic abuse with his father. This is very real. You get all these little side notes throughout the game, like pieces of evidence in Captain Spirit of what's going on. And the relationship he has with his mother. But yeah, he's alright. Put him there. Next up is Claire for the second game, same episode as Chris. Brother's grandparents, or grandmother, sorry. And I think she's fine. She's a bit restrictive with her rules in the household, which is what the episode is titled after. But she keeps the cops off them and is very supportive of them on their journey. And then at the end of the game, she can be at home for Daniel in some of the endings. But I don't think we get enough time to really, flesh her out. And she also keeps the boys away from their mother by hiding the letters and not telling them. So, I'd put her above Amanda, but yeah. And actually, I should organise this. I'd just keep it Alex above Brody, and this tier I'd probably go. I'd keep it in that order, actually. Next, and the easiest F tier on this list, possibly, maybe not actually, but for now he is Damon. Just an annoying antagonist. Bad person, but also just a really boring antagonist. I don't know why he's in Before the Storm. The main appeal of the game was the Chloe and Rachel relationship. He did not need to be there. At least as important as he was in terms of he was the main antagonist of the third episode. And a lot of the runtime of that was spent on him. So yeah, easy. I don't need to say anything more. He's F tier. Then we get to probably the most controversial character on this list in my eyes, and that is Daniel. I don't know what to think of him, really. First couple episodes I quite like him, and then he gets really annoying in the mid part, but he's a little bit better in the last episode. The fourth episode is so bad, though, for him. He's unbearable. He just only exists to defy Sean, but in the most confusing ways. I get he's been brainwashed, but he's still just... It's like there's conflict for the sake of it. It doesn't feel very real to me. Especially the jump from the second to the third episode. Now, I get he can be a bit annoyed at the circumstances, and maybe it's justified in a way, but things like when he just breaks into the room in the weed farm and attempts to steal, when you tell him about 52 times to not do it. That just really annoys me. Now, I don't put him in the lower tiers. I'll probably put him probably just behind. I'll put him ahead of Chris actually, but because he's still likable, and you know the whole point of the second game is him in a way, and I do like the second game. So yeah, but I can't put him higher. I can't. Another controversial character though, next up is David. A very flawed character, but in terms of actual writing, a very well written character, and he's very believable. Again, he's very flawed. We learned this throughout the first game. He has quite a big arc. In the first couple of episodes, he feels like the actual antagonist and maybe a suspect in the disappearance of Rachel. But we learned that he actually was investigating it fully and was very concerned about it. He just went about this in the wrong way. We also have the familial drama with him and Joyce relating to Chloe. And yeah, there's a lot of great moments for him in the bunker in episode 5 when he, expresses his sorrow that he can have a proper relationship with Chloe. If she is killed, or you tell him that. And in Before the Storm as well. Now, there's some sort of continuity errors of him before the storm, but I'm not going to put that down to his character. That's more the writer's problem. But yeah, I do like David. He's a good false suspect in the first game, and then he turns out to be an okay guy. I'm going to put him A tier. I'll put him below Brody still. Next, probably the biggest nothing burger, well, one of them from Double Exposure, is Diamond. I don't have much to say about her. I know she ran for that, like, Abraxas BTEC Vortex Club Society thing. That's really it. I guess just D, that I have no opinion. Another one who I don't have much opinion on next is Diane. She's the, like, Typhon, big boss or representative, I guess, in Haven Springs. They kind of play it like she's a bit, remorseful early on, but then she just stays on the company's side and doesn't really have any arc, I guess. She is always there for Typhon, despite the fact that she's a bit remorseful over the whole Gabe passing situation, and she tries to get it stopped, but then she toes the line no matter what, which isn't really kind of elaborated on at all because it just happens all at the end. Yeah, just there's not much more to say. Next up is Drew, the older brother of Mikey from Before the Storm. Canonically deadest, I think, in the storm if that happened, if you didn't kill Chloe or sacrifice her. Maybe kill's the wrong word. Yeah, he's kind of an antagonist to Nathan in Before the Storm, which is quite fun to watch. He can get his leg broken or knee or whatever. It's not broken fully, but you know what I mean. By Damon in the second episode, which is a really great scene in terms of the dilemma that Chloe has. There's not much more to say about him than that. He fits in here quite well. Just there, I'd say. Next up, a well done character in True Colors of Duckie. Now, he speaks very well to the grief themes in True Colors. I'd probably put him up in B tier because there's a great scene that's hidden in chapter 4 where you can like sort of have a dance for him and you speak about his deceased wife, which is very coherent with the themes of the game. As I said, it's just a very nice slow moment at the spring festival. I believe that's what it's called. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, he's decent. Has some good moments throughout the game. Now, I would get to my point now. What I've noticed is that True Colors and Double Exposure, just even Before the Storm, the Deck 9 games in general, they don't have many side characters, but all of them are quite involved with the story. Like, you have many interactions with them, whereas in the Don't Nod games of Life is Strange 1 and 2, there are so many side characters, but a lot of them are only in the game for one moment, really, and they're very forgettable in a way. But then there's a sort of closer main cast of side characters that are crucial. Like, for instance, David is a side character in the first game, but he's very important. I guess you could say Chris's dad is a side character that isn't as important in the second game. Another example would be the classmates, like, you know, Dana and characters like that in the first game, who I don't have in this because I don't know much to say about them. They are side characters. They don't have much of an impact, though. They're just there to sort of, you know, make the world feel more believable. True Colours and Double Exposure don't really have that. There's about 10 side characters. They're all important. Apart from that, there's really no one else. You know, Life Strange 1, 2 have a million side characters, all to various degrees of importance, whereas True Colours has about 10, and a couple of them are more important, like Ryan and Steph. It's just interesting to note. Keeping on that theme, another side character of True Colours is Eleanor. Again, I quite like her character. Her scene of the dementia one is it's brilliant. It's incredible. And again, she speaks to the grief themes because she actually forgets that Gabe is passed, and it's a heartfelt moment. It's True Colours' side characters are one of the strongest parts of the game, I would say, actually. Again, probably beat her again. I'm actually going to put her... I'm thinking about it, I'm going to put them higher up here. But I'd probably put... Actually, I'm going to put Cassidy up one as well. I think that's fair. Now, look at this. Next up, another easy ranking from Before the Storm again, is Eliot. Yeah, just a bit of a creep, stalker, Chloe. What more to say that? He's just, you know, I know people, myself included, don't really like Warren, but he's what the truest Warren haters actually think he was. Yeah. There's nothing more to say. But then moving on, we have Esteban. He is great for the few moments he's in the game before he gets obliterated. He's a very caring father, which is the point of him because it's meant to make his loss even harder on the brothers for the rest of the game because they truly love their father. Yeah, good father. I quite like him. He comes in a few flashbacks, I think, as well throughout the rest of the game where he's good as well. You know, probably gonna put him up here, and actually think about it, I'm gonna move David up there. Think I'll put Brody ahead as well. Actually, put Brody ahead. Yeah. Next up, Ethan has the Daniel case where he doesn't listen to you. At least in this world, it's more believable. Also, is suffering from grief because, you know, his mistake led to the death of Gabe. I think he's fine. The LARP is okay, I guess. I don't really have much of an opinion on him, though. I can put him top of C just because of his depiction of grief is quite real. There are a few moments where he breaks down, where he hears the alarm again in the third chapter, which is quite a nice moment. Next, and honestly, another character I don't really know where to put is Vinh. Quite a good character in terms of, you know, his motives are very believable. He's not a nice person, but that's kind of the point. He's not nice, but he is nice in a way. But I do quite like him. Not as a person, just as a character. You know, his heist sets off some chaos at the end of the third episode, which is good. You can speak to him afterwards if he's still alive. And you can forgive him or scold him for that. And yeah, probably put him like here. Thinking about it, I'll probably move the two kids up here, and I think that's fair. Yeah. Next up, and you may even forget she's here. I only put her here as a sort of, you know, role at the end of the game, of the second Life Strange game, and that is the detective, Flores, I believe. Yeah, nothing really to say. Pretty forgettable. She probably shouldn't even be in this tier list. Yeah, just there's fine. Next, and this one I can literally put at either end of this, kind of, is Frank. Awful person. I hate the writers tried to make him a bit like, you know, sympathetic at the end. I don't really know. A decent character, I guess, if you ignore, you know, his moral part, but like he's an interesting character, but again, he's played the wrong way. He should be detestable, not almost forgiven, because of the Rachel thing. Like, there was a whole age gap there that's, very not good. So I could put him here, but as a character, I could probably put him like even up here. So I think just I would put him in the middle, dead middle, and put him there, and that's it. It depends, though, again, as a person and as he's written at the end down here, but there's this whole like weird drug dealer, stick at the start. Like, he's quite an interesting character as a possible suspect, and just as a sort of scary figure around the town that you can sort of feel throughout the episodes as that he might apply pressure to Chloe for all the money. Yeah, seat is fair. Next up, Gabe. A great character again. You can sort of put him with the Esteban tier in terms of, they're involved at the start and crucial in the rest of the game's events. They sort of, their lack of a presence, well, their death, leaves a mark on the whole game. I think he's better, though. You can feel his presence for every side character in True Colors. They speak of how good a person he was. And it's sad that Alex, his own sister, was the one that didn't get to experience that because they were split up in the foster system early on, which is done expertly well as well when you work with a conflict with their father. So yeah, I'm gonna put him. I'm not sure. I prefer David just. I think that's fair. Next, probably the only good side character from Double Exposure is Gwen. Has some interesting dilemmas relating to Safi and the book. Has been hard done by the school and has some complex relationships with many of the staff and students, like Lucas. But again, like Double Exposure, there's not much to say. There's really not much to say. She's a decent side character. I quite like her. Probably not much to say apart from that. So yeah, we'll whack her in B tier. Bottom of that. Next up, and this is, guys, you again might have forgotten him, just sort of there to represent the one-off racist characters in Life Strange 2. Hank, I believe his name, and yeah, just Kingo here. I could have put the other guys from episode 4 in that, harass Sean when he's sleeping in the car. Yeah, not good people. Next up is Hannah, leader of the weed farm group, kind of, I think. Yeah, not much to say really. I remember her vaguely. Thought she was decent enough as the leader, and she speaks on the themes of them sticking together and always being there for each other. Apart from that, not much more to say. I just C tier. I guess she can go like there. That seems about right. But yeah, moving on. With somebody else from that group, we have Jacob, who's actually in 2 episodes. One of the few side characters to be in 2 episodes of this game. Again, I feel like he's a bit underdeveloped. You sort of learn a bit about him in terms of like the conversion therapy thing, which is very, it's a dark moment of what he had to go through. But I just really dislike episode 4. I find the Haven Point, church, or cult, I guess, very cartoon villainy-ish. I can probably put him top of C tier though, because he's a bit more developed than some other characters in the second game. But I don't have much of an opinion. Someone I do have more of an opinion about though is Mr. Ember. I know a not very good person, but he's not as good as David, but he's a flawed character that has some explanations for his motives. Now, what he did is not justifiable at all, but I can kind of understand him in a way in terms of wanting to protect Rachel. Now, he goes about this in completely the wrong way and should be, being present for this essentially. But you can sort of understand where he is coming from in terms of wanting to protect Rachel from Sera, who's destructive. But, that's not his decision, I don't think. It should be up to Rachel, whether she wants to see her mother. But as a character, I think he's pretty well written throughout War of Storm. I can't put him up here because, you know, of his... But I could. I'm not going to, though. I think he can go actually probably at the top of B tier. Not as a person. As a person, he's like, you know, down here with these guys. But as a character, he's okay. Next up, and it's fitting that these two people are next to each other, not James, you'll see after, but first we have Jed, sort of a budget Jefferson villain. We don't really spend much time with him actually before his twist. He's, you know, portrayed as this, like, you know, leader of Haven Springs, like community figure that's very well respected. But I just don't have much opinion for that, and then the twist feels kind of cheap and just a carbon copy of the first game. Now, what I will say is his, you know, motives are more explained and well done than Jefferson, and he doesn't turn into like the, you know, the mustache twirling villain as much as him, but still, the twist just feels cheap and a clone of the first game, so he probably can go down here. It's not my favorite part of True Colors, and you know, as I said, it's fitting that they're next to each other. The clone himself of what he's trying to be is Jefferson. Now, you know, honestly, before like the last episode, he honestly had a case to be up here, but he just becomes too mustache twirling where he has to overexplain his motives. When honestly, if he said less, the better, and also just the voice actor's like method of, you know, speaking in the last episode is way different to Jefferson and the rest of the game, which I find quite weird. Now, before that, he's a great art teacher, and you know, the actual moment where it's revealed is shocking, but it does kind of make sense, you know. You know, there has to be some ulterior motive why this elite teacher was at Blackwell in the first place. But I actually don't know where I stand on Jefferson. Probably I'm gonna go bottom of A because the twist is such a shock and really enjoyable in that moment. Next up, another one I really have nothing to say about is Joan from the last episode of the second game, at the away thing where Sean Daniel's mother lives. Yeah, I just put her in to have somebody from this group. I really have nothing to say about her at all. I guess, like, here, yeah, that shouldn't be in tennis, to be honest. Next up is Mr. Chen. I think John is his actual name. He is the father of, you know, Alex and Gabe. Very well done character. I kind of don't like structurally how they just shoehorn all his scenes in the last chapter. I'd have liked if they were more spread out over the game. But for what we do get of him, very believable character. He just reached breaking point and abandoned them, which is deplorable. But, you know, as a character, it's well done and believable in that moment. Again, as a person, he'd probably be let down here or here, but I kind of find him in the James boat where I just like them as a character. So I think he has to go up here. Again, not in the story for long, but, you know, quite well done. Moving on to Joyce, Chloe's biological mother. Another great character, very believable throughout Before the Storm and the first game. Before the Storm, she just wants the best for Chloe and will do what she can to help her, but she's obviously struggling as well with the death of William. She's just very supportive throughout, though, and just wants to have a closer relationship. Wants to have a closer relationship with her daughter after, you know, the death of William, as I said. And in the first game, her relationship with Max is also great. And even the alternate timeline, you can tell she still cares for Chloe in that situation. She's struggling, and, you know, the family's struggling financially. But you can see the level of care she has for Chloe in any universe. Other things to note for her in the first game? I mean, obviously she couldn't even pass away, and it's mentioned in double exposure And the second game, if she does pass away, about how it affected David. And the relationship with David, I think, is also, well done. David is obviously struggling as well with his, PTSD, I guess, and, time in the military. And Joyce struggling as well with being a widow. And they find each other. And, well, Chloe doesn't like this, but I think throughout both games, she's very well done. I probably would go up here, A tier. You could even say up here, but, maybe actually I am going to do that. I think that's fair. We've probably did a bit more or less tier. Next up, Kate's another great character. Just a pure victim, essentially, in the first episodes of bullying by the Vortex Club members. Through obviously no fault of her own, but she was drugged. A victim of Jefferson / Nathan in this case, but we can combine both of them together because, Nathan was obviously a victim of Jefferson, but that doesn't excuse what he did. Yeah, and her kind of suicide attempt is the catalyst to really uncover that some really bad stuff is going around Blackwell. And she could have easily been another Rachel, but she wasn't. Her, scene on the roof as well is a very sad moment, but a great scene. I do enjoy it. Honestly, probably I'd put here. I think I don't, because she's not in the heart of the game as someone like David to be top tier, but she's essentially only in like 2 episodes and 1 scene in, I think, the 5th episode or the 4th episode, sorry. And in that time, I think she's a good character, yeah. So, top of 8, yeah. Next up, another great side character is Karen, the brother's mother, Sean Daniels. She's mentioned the whole game and then appears out of nowhere in the 4th episode, and this is the only good part of that episode. One of the best parts of the 5th episode as well, in terms of her rebuilding her relationship with Sean, who Sean was aware of her when she left, Daniel, who wasn't, so she's sort of just starting that relationship with him. And again, the reasons she gives for leaving them are very justifiable, although you don't have to understand them. You can, deplore her for leaving them, but she's a very real character, very well written. And again, it's another case of the second game getting its side characters very right. In fact, she's probably my favourite side character in the second game. I genuinely think here is fair for her. I really enjoy her scenes. Enjoy her scene in the motel with Sean, and also when you go out, at night with them to say goodbye, essentially, in the 5th episode, up the canyon. You can also write her a nice letter as Sean. Next, and another easy ranking, is Lisbeth. Just not a good character, cartoon villain, really annoying. Just, we've seen this trope in so many pieces of fiction before, of the evil cult leader, and there's no depth to her. She just is exactly what she is on the surface. She's only in there for half an episode, and then she leaves. Not memorable at all. A weak villain, which this franchise has a lot, to be fair. Maybe I should sort the last bottom tier out. I probably still would go Damon bottom, then here. I think this is fair. Continuing on, we have Loretta. Yeah, she's kind of not the best person, but not the worst. She's a bit invasive in terms of her questions. And that's really her character. She can sort of have an epiphany at the end that she shouldn't be so invasive. But that's really it. Probably here. Not much more to say. Then on to another double exposure character, which I just don't like speaking about, as you can already tell if you've seen my videos before on each game, which I'd recommend watching if you wanted to. But yeah, next we have Lucas. Not a great person. Has more depth than most double exposure side characters in terms of his relationship with his son. But, he did kind of the suicide of a girl. He plagiarized her. But I will rank him a bit higher. Sort of similar in the Jed tier, where, at least they have excellent, reasons that kind of justifiable. And thinking about this, I've kind of undervalued Jed here. I probably should put him up a bit. Probably like, I think here's fair. Yeah, that is fair. Next up, and what I've learned from making this tier list, again, I've gone in blind here. I have no notes. I'm just saying what's coming to my head first. Wow, the second game has a lot of good side characters. This is another example of one being Lyla. Barely in the game, but memorable at the start in terms of her relationship with Sean. They're very good friends. And I wish she was in the game more, but I think that's kind of the point. She is kind of a prime example of what Sean loses by going on the run. I can't put her in the top tier in A, but I can put her probably top of B. So yeah, there are a lot of good side characters in this end game. And then back to the Deck 9 game side characters, which generally miss the mark. Maybe not in True Colors as much, but this one is Mac. Just a really bad false suspect red herring. He's only the suspect for like 10 minutes. But yeah, I don't really know what to say here. He's just in the, we spent him for 10 minutes, then you sort of interrogate him with Alex, and he instantly like apologizes and says he was forced, and then from that point onwards, he served his purpose by like the halfway point of chapter 2. So that's all there is to him. Comfortable C. I'd probably put him like, actually no, I'd move him D. I'd probably move him there. Yeah, that's fair. Okay, we are back with a slightly adjusted tier list. Not that it needs to be adjusted for this one, because this is the easiest ranking again. We have Max. She will go in S tier. Now, great protagonist in the first game. Very believable, and her sort of shy nature fits in well in her character, and also nosy, because she's nosy, and a lot of time when you're roaming free with her in certain environments, you can investigate things, which is very fitting with the character. Her relationship with Chloe is the main reason people love the first game, I believe. And yeah, I mean, like I've said this to Chloe already, so many good scenes between the two of them, and it's just fun to uncover the mystery of Arcadia Bay. That's her. But then you do have the risk double exposure elephant in the room. I don't think she's actually terrible in double exposure. I think she's pretty forgettable, to be honest, as a character, but she's not the reason why it's bad. So that does, knock her down a bit, because it's, anyone associated with that game would seem worse. But I don't think it would knock her down a tier. I'd probably still put her comfortably here, in S tier. Just behind Chloe, though, because Chloe doesn't have that double exposure mess attached to her. Next up, though, onto more or less important side characters is Merrill from the wheat farm. Not much to say on him. He's kind of believable, this role. He has, a scene where he talks about, children with Sean and lectures him about having to raise Daniel. And also, rightfully is quite upset he's getting robbed. So he's I'd probably put him top of C tier, because he has some, in the few moments he's somewhat engaging and interesting, but he's barely there. Next up is Mikey. We've had to adjust tiers again, because the mid tiers are getting quite stacked. He's going to go in one of those as well. Spoiler alert. He's a bit higher up. I quite like his character. He's, in terms of Before the Storm, you'd put him the exact same as Drew. They'd like D&D. One of them, he could get hurt as well as a result of Damon. Not in my playthroughs, but yeah. But the clincher with him is the scene with Steph in the Wavelengths episode, where they sort of, go through the storm and how it really impacts them. Or Chloe and they catch up like years later. I always like that moment. So yeah, he probably can go about, I think, here, and B's fair. Next up, yeah, another double exposure, Moses. I've kind of gone a bit colder on his character. I just don't really remember much about him. He has no really memorable moments. I, yeah, I just feel really nothing to him. That's literally all there is to it. But yeah, that's all I can say. Well, next though, we have Nathan. And as a person, awful, but his motives, and not motives, that's the wrong word, but he isn't a character that makes sense, you know, in terms of how he turns out how he did, because of his, the pressures around him of his family and just his status in general. It makes sense that he's evil. It really does. Pressure from family, and he just flips out at everyone and everything. Extremely violent, but a very believable side character and quite well written, I think. Also gets his comeuppance in terms of being betrayed by Jefferson because of his mistakes. Awful person that should be down here, but as a character, I think I'm going to put him actually probably death, just above Jefferson. I'm actually going to bump Jefferson down as well because yeah, it's that. But yeah, Nathan, very dislikable, but as a character, believable. That raises us our next character. That's Penny. Yeah, he shouldn't have been this as well. I don't know how he slipped in here. I just wrote it on the list. He speaks about, I think, was it his friend, boyfriend, something like that, that went missing. That's the only thing I remember about him. Yeah, that's. I guess just bottom of D because I don't remember him being bad at all, or boring. I just don't remember much about him. That's literally it. Then the next one is Pike from True Colors. Probably one of the more forgettable side characters from True Colors. He has some funny moments where like he sort of baits, Alex thinks she's in trouble, and then actually does arrest her or takes her into custody in the fourth chapter. That's really it of him though. I think just with here with Diane as sort of side characters that don't really do much. That's all there is to it. Next up, the controversial one you could say is, well, similar to Chloe in a way, is Rachel herself. Now, in in the first game, even though she's not there, easy best tier. The mystique of her is a big part of the first game, as good as it is. Before the Storm is a bit more confusing because she's a bit abusive towards Chloe and manipulative, but that's kind of, it makes sense in a sense. I said sense a lot there, but their relationship being this toxic does make sense when you consider what, turns Rachel takes in her life in terms of the people she falls in with, in terms of Jefferson, Frank. Like, she obviously is a bit twisted in a sense and easily taken advantage of, so can fall into these toxic and awful relationships where she's obviously not at fault for it because, people like Frank and Jefferson are evil for that. But it's understandable why Rachel didn't turn out to be the perfect student that she is portrayed as. So I'm still going to put her just into here because she's extremely memorable, and the first game does the heavy lifting here. I've never felt a character we haven't seen in a game as much as I do with her. Oh, we haven't got many people left now. So what time for another nothing bag or a double exposure character? Reggie. I actually don't remember a single thing. Actually, that's a lie. He sees himself. That's it. Yeah. D tier. Then we have Riley, who has conflict with Mac, cares for Eleanor. There's not much to her really in True Colors. She's okay. I can just put her like C tier quite comfortably. I don't have much more to say about her. Yeah, well, that means we're getting to another tier list adjustment as well, because this is really filling up. Okay, moving on. We have not many characters left, and another pretty forgettable one here is Rose, or Rachel's mother if you forget. I feel like James gets all the heavy lifting in terms of parental relationships with Rachel in Before the Storm, so she's sort of just left there. I think you have one discussion with her about how it affects her that she is not Rachel's biological mother. That's all I really remember, so I can just go. There's sort of a whole tier here of characters that don't really do much. She can go there. Next up, and actually I don't have a clue how I'll rank this, is Ryan from True Colours. He's not as compelling as Steph, not really close. The one I do like of him is in the 5th chapter when he has to sort of confront the truth that his dad did kill those miners in an attempt to kill Alex. And that's tough for him, obviously. He can sort of get an abrupt ending as well in True Colours, where like you don't get to speak to him at the end, even if you like romanced him. I don't have too much opinion on Ryan. I think he's okay enough. I'd probably just put him comfortably like, let's say like here and B. Then we have the easiest rank in the whole list, and it's Safi. And yeah, well, I can make it just for her, to be honest, in terms of how nonsensical her character is and how, like she, at least these characters, right, they're pretty unimportant in terms of their individual games. They're in for a little bit and they're forgettable. She like is meant to be this, our ally for most of Double Exposure, but then she just becomes like the Marvel villain, like of using her powers, for evil, and tries to convince Max to, do that. I just don't know what they were thinking with her in Double Exposure, and I can't stand her. I don't want to speak about her anymore. Moving on to a character who is a lot better, even though again pretty forgettable, is Samuel. Has some weird visions of the future, I guess you could say, to Max in the first game, but he sort of dropped as an important point at the end. I guess he's just sort of there to make us feel a bit, weird or scared almost of what is to come. He reminds me of, I forget the character in Twin Peaks, but there's that he hangs himself. He's like friends with Laura Palmer, I think. Like, oh, I forget the character that speaks to him. I will search that now and cut, edit, and be back with a second. I am back from the future, and the character was called Harold Smith, and it was Donna that met him a few times and tried to learn about Laura. I guess that's kind of what this guy reminds me of, but without, the hanging himself thing. So yeah, he's fine. Not really much of an opinion again. I guess just because he plays into the atmosphere of the first game, I would put him a bit higher than pretty much everyone in the mid tier. He can go and see it. Next up is Sera from the second game, and she's sort of just a plot point to show us how evil that the cult is, because she is sick and they won't get her any help or medicine or healthcare of any kind. Yeah, just because she's sympathetic, obviously, and her relationship with Jacob is good to see, but she's just a plot point, so I think CT is fair. Next up, Sean, protagonist of the second game. Now, he's a bit too much of a blank canvas for me to put him really at the top upper echelons of characters here. Like, he's cool and he's decent enough, but I don't like the relationship with the brothers as much as some other protagonist relationships in the franchise. So, whilst I like him, it's not like, it's not. I don't think he's the best character ever, basically. So, I can probably put him middle of A, because he still is a good character. It's still nice to see him, grow as sort of a father figure throughout the game. but he's not top of the top tier. Still a good character though. Then we have the only case of dual names in this list, and it's Sean Prescott, Nathan's father. We don't really spend enough time with him, but I feel like he could have been a really good character if we spent more time with him in terms of this like evil figure that controlled Arcadia Bay. That plot point was probably dropped from the first game. Now in Before the Storm, he's just there to sort of, berate or belittle Nathan at the school play. I just top of detail because it could have been good, but we don't spend enough time with him. And you know what that means now? Time for another tier list adjustment. Well, now we have 10 characters left to judge, and the next one of that is Sera. And this is a hard one to rank. Very important character in Before the Storm. Now, I feel like I could put her quite high if it wasn't for one thing. It was how she sort of just gives up on Rachel at the end, despite the fact she went through such a length to try and meet her and was so ready to do it, but then suddenly changes her mind at the last minute because she gets forced back onto heroin, which wasn't her fault. I never really got that point. Outside of that, yeah, very intriguing character. The mystery of her throughout, the first couple episodes before we actually learn who she is very interesting. So I also do like the scene of her before, at the end in the sawmill, whatever it's called, just before she says she didn't want to see Rachel. Before that, her interaction with Chloe in terms of what they speak about, their pasts and how they feel this plus moment in terms of grief and everything. I can go here, which is fitting, but it needs to next together. I think that's fair though. Next up, Skip from Before the Storm. Pretty fun side character, just security guard. The scene with him and Chloe in the Boys Storms is hilarious. Now he's played a bit too stupid in that, but it's still really funny. So just for that, he can get like a mid C tier. He's fun enough, but yeah, pretty forgettable. Wouldn't be surprised if you didn't know who he was. Then we have Steph, one of the main characters of this franchise. Obviously in Before the Storm, where I might quite enjoy her, similar to Drew and Steph, but she's a bit more involved with Chloe in terms of, she wants to be with Rachel and ask Chloe if she is. Easily the best side character. Well, close with Gabe maybe in True Colors, but Wave Up is such a good episode in terms of just how she's dealing with the grief, and in my playthroughs of it, how she dealt with the storm and her, mother died and that. There's also books of her, and I probably should read those. But yeah, in terms of what we see from the games, I think another Esther here. I'm going to put her probably third, actually. Probably third. I think that is fair. Moving on. We have Stephen. Yeah, he's obviously the boy's grandfather, and Claire actually has some involvement in this. Stephen does not. He's just sort of there in this episode. Don't remember much about him. The closet falls on him. That's really it. I guess just here. I don't have an opinion though. Someone I guess you have more of an opinion. You can have more of an opinion about, or definitely would, is Victoria. Great character, I think, in terms of the role she's meant to portray in the first game. She does that to a T. The sort of mean girl to high school or college, whatever Blackwell is, it's a million things. Can sort of have some sort of form of redemption arc at the end. Now, I feel like she's a bit too one note to, reach the top tier like these characters. All these characters have many different sides to them, with the exception of Joyce, maybe. But Joyce, I feel like, is just a brilliant side character. Victoria is very one note, but very well written in that sense, and she fills that role perfectly throughout the whole game. So I'm honestly feeling like top 8 here, actually. Yeah. And the last tier, the F tier, is named for her. Next up, another easy one here, Vinh. He's not as bad as them, but he's going down here. Over sexualizes everything. The fact he's a romance option is bad and just quite annoying. Don't know why he had such a big role in double exposure. Well, I do, because the game's awful. And that's what there is to say. And all I want to say about him. Moving on, Warren. But imagine if Warren was as bad as these guys now. But Warren, I think, is okay. Bit annoying, but I guess that's kind of his point. I'm not the biggest fan of him, but as a side character, there's definitely much worse, and he is a little bit endearing, I guess. So I can go like bottom of B tier on him. Yeah, that's all there really is to it for me and Warren. Watch my video on the Life Strange episode ranking. I probably mentioned him a million times. Last three now. Wells next. Kind of a fun character in terms of just how stupid he is, and that's the point of him, and how, like, you know, what in the Prescott's pocket he is. And yeah, they sort of have like a raging. They sort of have like a he's an alcoholic plot line going in the first game. Kind of gets dropped quickly. There's not really much to him. He confronts you a few times, or Max at least, on Nathan and on the Kate incident as well. And he can suspend Max. He does suspend Chloe or expel her. He's pretty one though. It is interesting to see him in the San Francisco timeline, and you know how sorry he is to Max about the whole Jefferson stuff and everything. But just C tier. He's just there mostly. Next up, William. Not as good as Joyce, obviously, because, you know, the lack of time he has in the game, because, you know, the whole death thing obviously kind of happened. Now, in Farewell, that's very well done in terms of his death as the lead up to it, or the ending of it, I should say. In episode 4 of the first game, he's seen as a very caring father, and you can see why Chloe was so distraught over the death of him. As well in Before the Storm and the flashbacks we get. It's a tragedy what happened to him. I can put him in A tier, because he has sort of the Rachel thing where his absence is so important for the plot lines of these games. You feel him even though he's not there. Probably put him, I think, here. We can put the two dead files next to each other. And then we're on to our last character of Yasmin, and pretty dull way to end this tier list. Honestly, the plotline of Double Exposure is so convoluted, I forget why Safi even hates her, like, because she cancels her book deal, I think. That's not her fault as a character, but yeah, we can put her in Double Exposure tier, because she's a bit more about her than the others, so honestly, you can put her, like, second top. But that's... yeah, there's not much more to say on that. Now let's do a run over of it. I agree with this. Yeah, honestly, I'm pretty happy with this tier list. Yeah, that's all I've got to say about this. Now, my tier list, I believe Chloe'd still be the best. Max second, that's pretty comfortable. Then after that, yeah. What I've noticed from this, the second game has a lot of great side characters. Obviously, the first does. And obviously, Double Exposure does not. But yeah, for Life Strange, that should be it for this video. I want to speak about a few more things, though, in terms of Double Exposure. There was some leaks that a DLC was coming. We haven't got an announcement about that yet. If we do get it, I will obviously make a video on that after I have, you know, judged it. And there are still rumors over a second Double Exposure game coming out as well, which is apparently an obligation. Again, if that comes out, I will obviously make a video on it. As well, in the future, I will be looking to make another video on the TV show when we get more information about it. I will sort of go through what I want in it, episode by episode, which should be quite interesting. But yeah, that's all for this one of this tier list. It's been quite fun to actually go through this. I've never really done a tier list on the character before, so this is new for me. been nice to go through and rank all the characters one by one. That's all for today, and yeah, like, subscribe if you wish, if you enjoyed it. I'll see you soon. Goodbye. Thanks.